Hey everyone, welcome to our Leader Seeds podcast. It's me, Jordan. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that one great experience has the potential to change someone's world? Now, if you said yes to that, chances are you're going to love the conversation we have today. And today on our interview section with our Leader Seeds podcast, we're talking to Carolene Meli. And Carolene is an experienced strategist. She leads a leadership program called Better Your Leadership. And that's where she mentors the upcoming generation of emotionally intelligent leaders. She also hosts a great YouTube channel called The Experience Creators. Now, she has insight that comes over 15 years of leading global events, predominantly with Cirque du Soleil. And this is where she ran successful VIP experience teams over 17 countries for about a 10-year span. So it's pretty awesome. Now, she also ran the entertainment department on cruise ships, and she also led numerous store opening teams with Lululemon Athletica. Now, she's an avid traveler, traveling to over 41 countries, but regardless of wherever she's leading at, one thing that is her North Star is a belief that one great experience has the potential to change someone's world. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get today's interview section started. Thanks for being here at Leader Seeds Podcast, and I'll see you on the interview. So we're here today at Leader Seeds Podcast, and I got a great friend and an awesome, successful woman. Her name is Carolene Meli. How are you doing, Carolene?
Doing so good. Excited for this.
Awesome. I am too. And I know we're actually on different times of the day, right? So I'm just starting mine. So kind of tell me, how's your day so far?
Yeah, so good. I am currently in Montenegro, which for those that don't know where that is, it's just across from Italy, across the Adriatic Sea from Italy in the Baltics. And the sun is very warm these days. So it's summer is just around the corner. We're getting all kind of really, really excited and impetuous because it's almost here. So it brings a lot of life into the days, I think.
Wow. I have a question. I see some pictures you post and stuff. And is every day that amazing? Because those pictures you post, I'm like, that's postcard shots. Like, that's good stuff. Yeah. It
is funny because people often say like, wow, like your photography skills. And I'm like, it's not me. Like I'm literally with my iPhone. I just press the button. The thing about Montenegro here is that it's one of those places where the mountains meet the sea. And that's what makes it so picturesque. It's a very, very small country, but you have that joining of those two kind of styles of landscape that is not often seen in, I know Hawaii for sure is definitely a place where that exists. But when that exists, that just allows for the most incredible views and sunsets. And yeah, it's very beautiful.
Wow. I where I live on a part of Hawaii that I live, actually I can relate to what you're saying, where the mountain meets the sea. And it's honestly some things when you say that, you can take it for granted. Like I grew up here and you can just travel and kind of take things for granted. But when you see those shots, as I'm seeing you posted, and I never made that connection before, but you're mentioning about that. And that's so true. That's so true. You get both of those elements in every shot, right?
Yes, exactly. I grew up in Australia, and so Australia is very well known for its incredible landscape, in particular its beaches, but it's not often, at least in my own personal experience, where the mountains have met the sea, right. Usually the ocean is there, it's the beaches are very, very vast, and then it's usually met with humans, I guess, like infrastructure and roads and stuff and parks, but not necessarily mountains. So it's a very different dynamic, but it equally is beautiful.
Wow. Well, one day I hope to visit out there because I love culture, and that's when I see the pictures, I see a great, rich culture that still exists, So I look forward to that one day. Awesome.
Mediterranean for you.
Well, thanks for kind of taking some time to chat today. The more I got a chance to learn about what you're doing and what you're working on, I got to say, it's one of those things that it just keeps building. I'm just like, oh man, like I thought I was, inspired the last time I read some stuff that you're working on. And then I see something else you're working on. I'm like, wow, there's definitely good momentum and there's good energy and there's great output of what you're kind of pouring into the leadership community. So thanks for taking the time to chat today. At Leader Seeds, as you're familiar with, what we talk about a lot of times is we get a chance to look at what people are experiencing in leadership, because that's so important in today's world. But also like what people can do today, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, maybe if you can share what was really interesting is maybe where would you want to start in today's conversation? Because I know there's a lot of things we can talk on, but what kind of comes to mind when you think of leadership right now?
I think the first thing, and maybe to set a little bit of context for the rest of the conversation, is where my leadership style kind of grew out of. And I spent 10 years on tour with Cirque du Soleil, and the way that worked is that I was part of a front of house team that would travel with the show. However, in each city that we went to, we would hire about 100 local staff to work for us, because the staff had to speak the same language as the audience, as our guests. And so for me as a leader, I learned very quickly, and obviously over a long period of time, different styles and what works, what doesn't work, and what my own personal style is through that experience, because I would only have my team for 2 months, and then we would move either cities or countries depending on the region, and then we'd do it all over again. But sometimes I was met with a different culture, a different language, which was obviously like one of the harder barriers, just different ways of working, different restrictions in that city, that didn't exist in the last one. And so I feel like when I summarize that experience at Cirque du Soleil, I led teams in 17 different countries. And to me, it was a bit of a leadership playground, I like to say, because I had the most incredible opportunity to just continue to trial and error, because I only had such a short time in each place. So that's kind of was the backbone. And then I've done some other unique leadership opportunities as well, like leading the entertainment department on a cruise ship that was in the Mediterranean. And we went all the way across to the Caribbean, 6 days at sea, I think. And that was an incredible experience. So my leadership journey has been incredibly unique. It has been incredibly global. And that is my favorite part about my leadership story.
I love when you share that. There's an excitement when you share that, because I'm also thinking that with that exact same situations, there could be a lot of stress, right? Somebody can explain almost the same situation and be like, the team kept changing and we kept moving. And as soon as I trained everybody, I lost everybody. And, there's a lot of, but your tone and your excitement for it really to me, it captures your mindset for that unique perspective you have on leadership, which is really interesting. You see it's constantly growing and constantly changing, right?
But that's it. Who has the opportunity to lead teams in 17 different countries? It's very rare, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. And of course, it was incredibly stressful at times. We were in Paris when the terror attacks happened, for example. That was incredibly stressful. I was in Russia. I had to lead a team through a translator that was with me the whole time. Incredibly stressful, because I was not able to show my style. Like I was not able to connect in a different way. And then of course, so many other different examples of different stresses that would come in. Most of them, to be honest, completely unexpected, which gets you become very good at adapting. Your adaptability skills become very, very good when you are met with those kind of stresses that are very last minute. And so that's what, when I think of those 10 years, that's what I think about.
Wow. So definitely flexibility came to mind. Absolutely. And your approach to flexibility, like you almost not just embrace it, but you prepare for it, and that's such a really powerful leadership component, because leadership is all about growing, as you know well, and with growth, there's change. Now with that, I think I'm really curious, Carolene, like, do you think your leadership perspective changed in that process, or you think you as somebody that kind of just from the start, you've seen it that way, or did it kind of evolve and grow?
I still think I'm evolving and growing as a leader. And I think if we do this interview when I'm 85 years old, I think I'll still say the same thing. It's a constant evolution, because we're constantly in different situations, right? When I started at Cirque du Soleil, I was 23 years old. I was really young. I was young, I was cocky, and I thought that I was a great leader, and I got slapped in the face pretty hard very quickly. And The thing that when I think about my own experience, the advantage that I had was that I was always very open-minded, still to this day, very open-minded, very curious, and really eager to learn and really eager to succeed through like, okay, we need to learn how to do this really well. And I did not have the luxury of time in those situations. If something didn't work, I had to change it for the next night, for the next show. I didn't have time to like, let's have a meeting about this. Like, let's talk about it for like weeks on end. Like, let's strategize. No, I had to like do something immediately. And so I think that was incredibly stressful in the moment. However, that taught me that I really had to think on my feet very quickly, but also think very intelligently so that when I would roll something out as a leader, that I was able to back it up with, these are the reasons why I'm doing it. I'm not just doing it for the hell of it. And that's not easy. It takes a while to actually kind of make that become like second nature.
Right.
But I think it is constantly evolving. And even a year ago, I was still working for Cirque du Soleil, and I felt very advanced in my own leadership ability, especially the job that I was doing. Yet there were still so many situations in the first few months of 2020 where I was like, oh my gosh, like what, I don't know how to deal with this situation. And you'd think after 10 years in that environment, you would. So it's a constantly evolving. The thing about leadership is we're dealing with humans. We're humans dealing with humans. So I don't think you can ever perfect that art. I think you can get very good at it, but I don't think you can ever perfect it. So it's a constant evolution.
Very well said. And I love that. I agree 100%. The goal isn't the perfection of leadership, right? We just continue to progress and kind of be curious. I love that curiosity of how you kind of approach things and everything else. When you mentioned the stress of it, I'm thinking that, I'm trying to put myself in that situation. For one, if I got a chance to be on the team with Cirque du Soleil, I'm already like throw a party, like, wow, like that's just incredible. What a team to be on for the standards that they have. And this is from my perspective. I've never been there, but I'm just seeing that they definitely are a team that have a standard that causes you to rise up. You talk about also these VIP experience teams that you create. Tell me what lies in that experience to call it a VIP experience.
Yeah, so at the VIP at Cirque du Soleil, it looked different on every single show, but it was the same premise, and basically it was just a higher price ticket. Now that maybe meant that it was individuals coming, who wanted to pay double, triple sometimes of the regular ticket price. So that was the VIP experience for them. For other times, it would be corporate experiences. So just say you and your team were doing your end of year budget review and you wanted to do it in a cool environment, that could be the VIP experience at Cirque du Soleil. So you do like the boring meeting first, and then you go and watch, you go and sit in the big top for an hour and a half and get absolutely amazed by what's in front of you. So there was corporate. So you have individual, you have corporate, and then there was one-off events, and then like celebrities. It was rare, but definitely in each city that we were in, there was probably, 1 to 3 occasions where we would have, quite well-known people coming in and having to kind of navigate them with the like regular people. was really interesting. So yeah, it was the same environment, same kind of setup. However, my guests were constantly changing the dynamic of them.
Thank you for explaining that, because that really stood out to me. Because after we talked the last time, I was looking at over some stuff, and I was thinking, wait, I already attached Cirque du Soleil to VIP. Now, if they have a VIP experience, I'm like, whoa, that's like a notch above, and for you to be the person to lead that for over a 10-year span.
Yeah.
Wow. To be the person to lead that, to organize that, to be flexible with the change. Even tell me the experience about, I had a small experience about working with a translator, but tell me your experience with that, because a language barrier is really hard, because communication is so important in leadership, right?
Yeah. So that was the most incredible experience that I was obviously anticipating it, because I knew that my staff had very, very limited English. However, obviously I'd never been in that situation before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And personally, I pride myself on being a very good communicator. I think I communicate quite intelligently, and I love to have deep conversations with people, but I also love to joke around and laugh. And I'll kind of like put you on the ground and in this situation. I'll never forget it. I was standing in front of my team. There was about 15 of them. My translator was to my right. And I mean, I'm hoping that she's translating what I'm saying, but I also know that she's not going to translate it as well as I would have said it in my own language. So you always have to consider that when you're in like multilingual environments. It's a really interesting way to think about communication, because you almost have to let your ego aside a little bit. And sometimes you really have to completely dumb down your language, how to speak, right? Because you have to find a way to connect with your staff. And if that means that you have to speak the most basic, 5-year-old English to them, then you have to do it, because you need to be understood. They need to understand you. So it's a very interesting dynamic to be in. And you really have to let go of ego in that situation, which is incredibly hard to do. I know for me, it's hard to do, but in this situation, we were there, I was addressing them. It was kind of the first meeting of the day, telling them how many people we were expecting, what percentage of the big top was full, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'll never forget, I made a joke. I don't remember what it was, but if you can imagine, I made the joke. I laughed at myself because I thought I was funny. And if they understood me, they would have laughed at the same time, right? So I laughed like, yeah. I had to wait for the translator to then translate that to these blank stares in front of me. And then they laughed afterwards. It was the craziest experience. Like, it was the weirdest. Like, just think if you tell a joke and it's faces in front of you. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. But it's just that my response was delayed by about, 20 seconds. It was really interesting.
Oh my! I'm imagining you laid it out so well. I'm trying to imagine that. And when you said that pause felt so long.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Like that silence when you're waiting for the translation to happen, and then everybody laughs, and you're just like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Wow, what a great experience, and what a great way your communication is. I can tell you really enjoy it, because just the way you explain that situation, you explaining it really put me in that situation to kind of try my best to kind of picture that in a sense. I always tell people I rather speak in public than tell jokes. Like, jokes are like, oh, I'm afraid. I don't know what it is about me. Like, I look at comedians and I just think it's such a great skill and talent to go through. So that terrified me, as you kind of sharing that moment, that pause when you're waiting for the punchline to hit and you're like, oh. So wow. That's I can relate a lot of times, because I think laughter is so cool, especially in leadership. It opens people up. It kind of breaks down walls, and we can connect better. Leadership, I think one really big thing is on connection, it's how a leader connects with their people, because leadership is influence. Tell me what that was. Speaking on connection, tell me what that was, maybe the pros and cons or things that really stood out as you kind of went through a season of continual transition, right? You build up a team, you create this VIP experience, and the next thing you know, the show's moving, you're going somewhere else, and now you got to connect with new people. Like you said, there's new country restrictions so you can't really take a cookie cutter model. You're constantly evolving and constantly adjusting. Tell me, maybe walk us through that a little bit. I'm really curious to see how the connection was made so well.
Yeah, so I learned quite quickly, although I didn't realize it quite quickly, but I did learn quite quickly that my success from an operational point of view was going to come down to how good of a leader I was in that situation. And if you break it down even further, how I was able to communicate and connect with my team. Because like you said, I had 2 months with these guys. Not only did I only have 2 months, but my training, like the onboarding, was done for about 3 hours on the same day as our first show. So that was the premiere of the show. So I get my guys, first time I ever seen them in my life. I have 3 hours to train them, and then we open the doors to the big top. We open the doors to the VIP for the most important night of the entire run, right? So you have a very short window in that situation to be able to connect, right? And so it was, and even if I take the cruise ship as another example, cruise is a very interesting world, and there's a lot of there's a lot of deep kind of pride in coming up the ranks. It's very rank oriented, right? It's very hierarchical. And so you have this girl who's like half Australian, half French, born in New Zealand. She doesn't even know where she's from, coming in and having the top position almost in the group, having never stepped on a cruise ship in my life. I was already seen as a bit of a threat initially, but so I had to I had to connect very, very quickly with these guys because I
Wow.
wanted them side, like I was leading them, you know. So in both of those situations, I had to connect very quickly. And the best way that I have found to do that is through my personality, you know, and also sharing my vision of how I am as a leader. And I think sometimes people never use that strategy, but when you are with a group of people for a very small amount of time, I want them to know what they can expect from me as a leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I might stand in front of them and say, okay, guys, look, just to let you know, this is my leadership style. I'm not authoritative, you know. I'm very creative. I'm very curious. I love to get feedback. I love to have conversations. I really love trying new ideas. And I want to make sure that this is a constant back and forth. I definitely don't micromanage. And usually I lead with a lot of trust. But if you kind of take advantage of that, that's where our issues are going to be. So can you imagine a leader standing in front of you telling you that you know what to expect straight away, and you may love that style and go, oh, okay, this is going to be great. She's going to be really cool. Like, I'm excited. Or you may be like, I'm not even like, this is going to be terrible, but at least you know, right?
Right,
at least
right.
you away. And so I can set that expectation. So I found that that was the easiest way to kind of get my team on board and actually connect with them. And then the second strategy that I would say that I would use is really to go all in on my personality. And, you know, that comes from confidence, and it's not easy. You know, a lot of leaders, especially if you're a new leader, you know, I have a leadership program right now and it's for new leaders. Like, they've never had a leadership position in their life. They're young, they're new. And so, you know, telling them to kind of show up with their full personality, that's not the best strategy when you're starting out. However, if you're able to get to the point where you're confident with who you are and confident in your expertise, leading with personality automatically breaks down the barriers like you had referred to in the past, and already makes you kind of one of them, right? Like, you guys are humans, you're humans, and you're connecting with each other in a different way. That's like, then she's my boss, you know, I need to do it. So they're my two strategies that I go in straight away with. For the most part, I would say 99% of the time, I'm highly successful with those strategies.
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. Let me go ahead, and I like to share a little bit of what I captured when you were sharing that. And I was looking down because I'm writing notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening in, I highly encourage you to take notes, because it's a great way to capture, you know, what's shared, because you don't want to miss what she's talking about right now. This is some really great ideas and really great, I say, practical insight that you can apply immediately. What I captured, Carolene, as you're sharing that, was when you say personality, and you kind of expound a little bit on that, you know, I wrote down the word, like, you know yourself, you know who you are, you know what you bring to the table. And then, but also you communicate that with them. You know, like, you're coming in, and in the picture you kind of shared too, is when you come into the room. I mean, did I hear you right? You have 3 hours before the big show to connect with people that you've never met before,
and train them, like,
and train them. Like,
right?
You mean you don't have like a 6-week onboarding process and to get people accustomed?
No way. They come in and we get going. You know, it's quick.
I love it. I love this is some real life, some real talk in leadership, right? Because sometimes we want that 6-month onboarding and let's go through a 21 module. And it's like, no, you're a leader. You show up today and you got 3 hours to connect with a team. But I love what you shared by you know yourself, you know what you bring to the table, you know your personality style, and you communicate that to them in a sense that really does build trust. Because connection, I mean, for myself, I know I connect. You know, connection has a lot to do with trust. If there's a disconnect in the team, that's more of a trust response that's happening that we want to dive into. So, you know, your ability to build that trust right in the beginning, you know, so quickly, and almost in a sense. Now, I don't want to. This is what I pictured when you shared that too. Is not every room you walked into, you had open arms that was welcoming you in. Because like you said, that whole rank structure with the crews, right? Like, you could have been like the person that they're like, oh man. But even with that hurdle, or that you was able to overcome that and build the team and connect. Am I capturing that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other element that is important to note, and I think a lot of leaders don't like to use this strategy, but I had to rely on them almost as they had to rely on me, because when we are looking at, when we are in a, let's say, for example, we're in Madrid, Spain, right? I can speak Spanish and I've been to Madrid many times. So let's say it's the first time I've ever gone to Madrid and I don't speak any Spanish at all. I need to rely on my staff because they are the ones, not only do they have insights about the guests that I don't have, the guests are their people, right? They're their local people. These guys are locals, not only are they Spanish, they're madrileños, so they're from their city. And so first of all, you have that element. So I was able, by being curious and asking them questions, I was able to, okay, what are we expecting tonight? Like, do you think everyone's going to be late? Okay, how do you think they're going to react to this? How do you think they're going to react to that? Okay, when we want to do a welcome drink, what's the welcome drink here? Like, if we put out champagne, is that the way to go? And then they were the ones that a lot of time came up with these ideas because they're the experts in their own city, right? Or their own country. So that was the first element. And then the second element is, imagine having the most angriest customer in front of you and you're not able to communicate with them, but you're the boss. And now you have to rely on some kid that's 20 years old that you've known for a day that has to translate everything for you. It's scary as a leader because they're not going to do it justice. That they're not going to have that conversation down, right. And they're going to be scared as well because they're like, oh my gosh, angry guest, and then she's there. And then, so I had to rely on them so that we could make these operations work, And so that's why I kind of put myself out there straight away to kind of try and build that trust straight away because I needed them as much as they needed me as a leader. So it's a very interesting dynamic to have a think about. And I think a lot of leaders shy away from that because it challenges your ego a little bit, right? Like, oh, I don't want to seem vulnerable, or I don't want to ask their opinion because then it's going to look like that I'm not the expert, or that I don't know what I'm doing, or that I'm not confident. Whereas I think it's almost the opposite in a way.
Right. I love it. And I agree 100%. I love how you kind of talked on, when you went through that situation, I was trying to count really quickly how much questions you led with, because questions we're more vulnerable, right? We're asking questions to the team. And sometimes we think as a leader, we're the one giving more statements, but you led that whole thing with asking questions and relying on them. And could you say that one more time for anyone taking notes? Like, say that, how did you say that, where we have to rely on them just as much as they rely on us, or something? How did you say that? Because I really like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said, that in order for the operations to work and thrive, not only just work, but thrive, I was looking after VIP guests, they had to be good. It had to be good from day one. There was no break-in period of a week. The first night was the premiere. It was the most important night that's when all the important people were there, And so it was up to me to really establish that connection with my team so that they felt incredibly valued straight away. They felt that their skill set was actually going to add to the operations. And I didn't even know what their skill sets were at the time. But when you are in those kind of environments, you become very observant. And like we mentioned before, quick thinking, adaptable, and you're able to pick up on things really, really quickly. But they knew that there were many moments where I had to rely on them as well. And so we had to have this reciprocal relationship for this to work. And it was only a 2-month relationship, but we had to find a way to make that work. And I knew I didn't have time on my side in this situation, so I had to go all in. I just had to go all in. And most of the time it worked.
This is, it's connecting right now in the moment, to be honest, as you shared. I'm thinking what you're talking on right now, Carolene. I'd honestly say that I think majority of the leaders, if I can even be as bold as to say, I think every person in our leadership arena or responsibility today, in the situation that we're in, with what's going on in the globe, or in the different nations and stuff, with the change and the restrictions. They're experiencing that right now, that we need to build trust quick. We need to communicate, and whatever we did today might change tomorrow, and it might change next week, and it might change again next month, but everybody's feeling that in a sense. So I'm wondering, for somebody like you that led teams through that at such a high level, and persevered. You didn't do this for like 6 months. You did this for 10 years and you grew it, so you definitely have some skin in the game, just a little. 10 years. That's a great amount. That's definitely a great amount. Now, what would you say if there's one thing And I know there's a lot, but if there's one thing that comes to mind right now, if you're talking to me, if I'm a person that's brand new in this, and and somebody's listening, maybe somebody's listening right now, and they're going through a new leadership season, and what would you kind of give them one thing to kind of focus on? If you use in a situation, what do you wish somebody told you to give you good perspective?
That's very easy for me. It's an easy question. The answer is curiosity. It is the number one reason why I think that I was able to do what I did. And, like I mentioned before, there was so many situations where I didn't have a choice but to be curious, right? Because there was a huge barrier standing in front of me, whether it was language, whether it was culture, no matter what it was. And the quickest way that I learned was by asking questions. It's very logical. We learn that from when we're 5 and we go to our first year of school, yet that gets trained out of us because it really attacks the ego in a way, right? And leaders don't use that as a strategy. And I will say it, like I will say it till forever, because I think it is such a powerful strategy that not many people actually take advantage of. But being curious not only is going to get you far in terms of your operations, no matter what, whatever that looks like, but curiosity in terms of your team as well. You're trying to build a connection with them. How do you build a connection with them? You ask them questions. And there was a quote that came up recently, and it was what was it? It was intelligent questions. No, what was it? Great quality. It was quality questions, quality life. And as soon as somebody said, I just heard that and I was like, damn, like, I feel that. So like, that was my favorite quote after, moving forward, because think about it. You can ask the dumbest questions and you're going to get nowhere, and you're going to just look like you have no idea what you're doing, or you're not intentional, right? Whereas if you actually think about the questions that you're asking, okay, what is my goal? What does my outcome need to be in the next hour, in the next week, in the month, whatever is the time frame? What don't I know right now? What do I need to know? What insights do I need to have, right? Okay, let me go ask the questions, and let me try and find the right people to ask the questions. And so curiosity for me is the number one thing. And I will always give that as my answer.
Spoken like somebody with great experience that have gone through the ropes. So thank you so much. Very well said. And I love it. Curiosity, that's such a great thing. Write that down, guys. If you're taking notes, quality questions, quality life.
That's not mine. Just to make that clear, that's definitely not my quote. I heard it and I was
that's
like,
okay. But it's so good. It's so good and so point. But I love how you also, you keep referring back to this thing we call ego. And I love how you kind of keep mentioning like that has to be dropped. There has to be an awareness in our leadership that can arise with anyone. Anybody can have that, but it's an idea of recognizing that and dropping that. You know what I mean? Because if that's in a way, that's probably, I'd say, one of the biggest barriers. What would you say? Ego is somewhat of one of the biggest barriers in leadership, right?
Yeah, for sure. Ryan Holiday has a book, Ego is the Enemy, and it's a really interesting way to kind of sum it up. But I'm going through it right now. I'm building my own career. That's hard. It's scary. You're learning every day. You're failing every day. Sometimes it feels like you're failing way more than you're succeeding. And if every day I let my kind of ego take over, then it would be very, very difficult, a lot more difficult than it is. And so what I've learned, especially in the last year, as I'm building out this incredible career for myself, this dream kind of career, every time that shows up, which is honestly all the time on a daily basis, but I'm trying to use it in a positive way. It's very hard. It's not easy. And I don't succeed a lot of the time, but every time that I kind of get down and I'm like, I'm not doing good, I'm not succeeding, I'm not connecting with the right people, I'm not doing this and that. Sometimes what I do is I even just write down a list of all the things that I've learned in the last week, because right now I'm in a stage that I'm sure you may be able to relate to, especially with podcasting, is you have to teach yourself a lot of things, right?
Right.
Certain more things than you thought. You're like, this is going to be easy. And then you have to learn how to do a whole nother set of skills. And so sometimes when I feel like very ego driven and like in a negative way, my strategy right now is just to write down all the things that I've learned that week, all the things I've taught myself, or maybe amazing connections, coming on a podcast like this. And I feel like once I see that list, I'm like, oh, okay, actually, you know what? Like I am doing good. You know, I am moving forward. But that's kind of my strategy. And maybe for one of your listeners, it might be a strategy that kind of works. It's super simple, but it can be quite effective because it's very small. It's very small little details. It's not like big achievements or
Right.
anything like that. You know? Yeah.
Well, man, I love it. I love it, and it's coming together. So let me share some points that I with leader seeds is always kind of like, you know, a lot of people follow the fruit because the fruit is what's shiny, but we want to be those that seek the seeds in leadership because the seeds is what helps train and develop us. You know, so if we're looking to grow as a leader, we want to identify the seeds in leadership because that's what grows us. So the seed that's coming to mind as you're sharing, and you touched on it like right off the bat. There was no hesitation, which I love. You didn't have to think about it long. As soon as I asked the question, he was like, that's an easy question. You just kind of said the seed of curiosity, you know, by being flexible and asking questions, right? And what an interesting thing as a leader. I think that's super helpful and super valuable. And our listeners will get a chance to see some great value in that by being a leader that asks questions, you know, and being curious about your team and about the situation, especially if you're in an environment that's constantly changing, you know, because when you're asking questions, it also sometimes maybe feels like you don't have a plan or you don't know what to do. And it could kind of challenge your ego a bit, right? Because as a leader, we want to look like we're prepared. I showed up and I'm ready. But if I'm asking questions, it has this sense like I'm not ready, but that's completely false. That's false because as you're sharing, you're ready to connect with them. That's what a leader does, right? They're connecting. So the seed is curiosity, but also what we do, and I don't even know if I shared this with you, but we identify the seed. We also identify the weeds. If you look at a garden, there's seeds that grow fruit, and then the weeds is things we don't want to do, right? We don't want that in our garden. So the weeds that you're identifying, that's so awesome. And our listeners, I think I want to guide them in that direction right now, is that the weed is ego.
Yeah.
Right, our ego that will try to rise up at times because we all wrestle with that. I love how you're touching on that because that can grow in our leadership garden in a sense. But we want to make sure to identify when that ego is kind of rising in us, and to know that that's going to actually prevent us from being a leader that connects because of curiosity. Oh, there's C's. I like that. It connects because of curiosity. I'm a dork like that. You got to forgive me. Sometimes when those things align, I'm like, oh, C's. But you know, we can connect better through our curiosity when we identify that weed of ego that's kind of growing up there. So that's the recap that comes to mind. Am I hearing it correctly? Would you adjust that in any way?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't adjust it. Two thoughts came to mind as you were saying that. The first is, I think, you know, when we're talking about asking questions, I think, especially when it relates to ego, it's important that we're asking ourselves questions as well, right?
Ooh.
You know, so if I'm feeling like this morning, maybe I woke up and I wasn't feeling that great and I wasn't feeling like I was succeeding and I was feeling like nothing was really moving forward. What are the questions I can ask myself to get a little bit more clarity or to go a little bit deeper, you know? So that's the first thing, because that's self-leadership. You can't be a good leader if you're not a good leader for yourself. You can't be a good leader for other people if you're not a good leader for yourself. It's that equation. If that was a mathematical equation, it would not work. Like, it doesn't work. So that's the first thing, is really the questions are not only for your team and the people around you, but they're for yourself as well. And then the second thing I will add about asking questions is, it is very, very important that you are actually listening to the answers, right?
Ooh.
Because if the team, imagine this, like, let's just paint the picture. If I was a leader of a team and I was constantly asking questions, but I was not listening, and I was re-asking questions, or I was dismissing the answers, right? That's another way. Like, maybe the answer was terrible and I was just like, no, like, no, absolutely not. Then what dynamic are you now creating in your team? You are challenging the trust of the team, right? You're challenging that connection. Whereas if I am asking questions, but I'm actually listening, and not only am I listening, but I'm forming a conversation around that, and I'm challenging them with new questions. Okay, so, and this happened a lot with me at Cirque du Soleil, because there was, you know, somebody would come to me with an idea and I'd be like, okay, idea sounds good. And then I would ask a bunch of questions. I would challenge them because I want them to be thoughtful with their answers. I want them to have thought about it previously so that we can have intelligent conversations, right? And so if you're not listening to the answers, why are you asking the questions? That, you know, is it just validation,
That's
or
so
is
good.
it, what is it, you know?
Right.
So it's all very well to say, you know, and that's good for me to note for the next time I have this conversation on another interview, but it's all very well to ask those intelligent questions, but you have to be listening to the answers, you know, in an intelligent way.
That's so good. You just took it to the whole new level. And if you guys are listening to this and you're writing notes, and I know our listeners are active and doing that, guys, capture all of this, what she's sharing, because Carolene just took it to a whole new level. Like, I think that was foundation when you talked about curiosity, but you're absolutely 100% right and spot on. And thank you so much for going into that and explaining about the self-leadership. It's the questions we ask ourselves, and we grow by asking better questions, even to ourselves. Now, also, we don't ask the questions just to check it off the list. I asked 2 questions today. Check. No, we're asking it to listen, right? We're seeing how well we listen. And a great indicator is when we ask questions, do people respond? Because if we're asking and nobody responds, they feel heard. They feel that, you know, that there's value in that we value their opinion and their insight, right? So being that leader that doesn't just ask the question to ask the question, but it actually challenges us to better our listening skills, right?
And I mean, this is the example that just came to mind. You know, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak from example, but, you know, when you're around young kids, you know, when they're, I don't know, I mean, you can tell me this better than I can, but like 4 years, 3, 4, every time you give them an answer, they say, but why? But why? But why? They're constantly challenging you to come up. And actually, I would actually compare that example to me when I'm speaking with people who are asking me questions about the English language. Why do you say it like that? Literally never thought of that. Like, no, but why do you use it that way? Or why do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about that. And then I'll go on Google and try and find it. But that's what children do. That's what you do with people when you're, especially from a language point of view, that happens a lot, you know? And so again, it's like that very inquisitive nature. But if you're still not there, if you're not at that answer yet, you need to keep going. You need to keep going. But I will say that you have to keep going in a way that is respectful. You know, that's not like pressuring the other person maybe into an answer, but you're forming this conversation. And now usually what happens, you know, there's that first follower mindset where it's that one person, but then somebody else sees. And so now there's somebody else in the conversation. And then now you end up having a group conversation, and it's amazing. So yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
It builds such a healthy environment and healthy teams, and it starts with healthy leadership. That's what I really believe in my core. And I thank you for sharing all of that, because after you share that, there is no doubt why you've been so successful with the challenges of leadership that you faced and overcome. There's absolutely no doubt. I mean, just seeing how you explain it, how you know, your mindset with it, but not just as theory, but also as actually implementation, like actually applying this theory, and not just that you found it in your life, but you've actually blessed other people. You know, you actually have a whole program that you take people through. And I'd like to, if it's okay with you, ask a little bit about that program. Like, it's such an awesome program. I love it. So if you're a brand new leader, you know, if you're in a new position of leadership, from what I understand, look at your program so far, and that's exactly what it helps. And I love that foundational element right from the start that it kind of helps people with, because that's in my journey. That's when a lot of questions happen. And I remember for me personally, I was asking a lot of questions when I was in my early stage of leadership. But the leader I was under in my younger 20s, then I remember him telling me clearly, I don't pay you to think, just do. And I was like, okay, I'm out. I got to go somewhere else, because I'm a thinker, you know? So I was asking a lot of questions because I wanted to learn. But in that form of leadership, that wasn't a healthy environment. So for you, if you can kind of explain a little bit more with this environment that you create for leaders, maybe just really the first thing is, what is something you see that a lot of people in that situation that you work with your program, what is something that's been consistent that they face that you help them overcome?
Yeah, so the whole reason I created this program was I created the program that I wish I would have had when I was 20 years old, exactly like you. What you've just, the situation that you just said, that's the exact person that it's for. It's for people who don't have inspiring leaders around them, or who are just have no idea, you know, who are just starting out. They've literally never had a leadership position. And so that was really the premise, because I was like you, I was always wanting more, and the companies that I worked for never had these opportunities. And so I was always so frustrated, and I always felt held back,
Mhm.
and I always wanted more leadership opportunities. And so it got to the point, especially last year, that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to create a program. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not going to wait around anymore. I know that there are young people out there that are in this situation, but that are highly ambitious, that want to learn how to be great leaders from day one. And the entire first section of the curriculum is self-leadership. And what 20-year-old, I'm thinking of myself at 20 years old, I definitely didn't learn anything about self-leadership, at least not framed in that way. It was almost, you learn by doing. And so that is a huge part of the curriculum. And so it starts with self-leadership. So leading yourself, then it goes to leading your team, and then leading your guests. So this program is specifically for, it can apply to kind of any industry. However, this is specifically for service-based industries, so travel, cruise, entertainment, events, hospitality. That's kind of the world that I came from, which is why the course really pertains to that style of work. And it's really for those coming up, maybe they've been in the workforce a couple of years, and now they're all of a sudden like the leader of a section at McDonald's or something like that, or now they're the bar manager, or now they're the floor manager, and they really need a place. And so this space, really the heart of the program, is around these bi-weekly coaching calls. And it is the most important part, because it is an unbiased space where people can come and actually learn through being actually very truthful and honest in a way that you would never do with your boss or your other colleagues or other people in your work environment, especially when you're young, right?
Right.
I want people to come in and be like, my boss, oh my gosh, what a whole list of words after that. They said this to me, I didn't know how to respond, I didn't know what to do. Like, I need those kind of conversations. This platform is specifically for that. So we can learn through the actual experiences that people are going through. I call myself an experience strategist. I focus on the experience, So there's a curriculum side, but it's really about, okay, take that, go tomorrow and do that thing, and then come back in 2 weeks and we're going to chat about it. And I think that's a very unique space to have available to young people, and hence why I created it.
Wow. I absolutely love it. And it gets me more excited about it, because when those initial questions in leadership go unanswered or answered incorrectly, it can really set a leader in the wrong direction, and we in the leadership, we use the term healthy and unhealthy leadership. And a lot of it has to do with the lifestyle that it happens by these little seeds, there's little habits, these little mindsets that starts to form as a leader that's inaccurate, but we keep kind of building on that in a sense, if those questions aren't addressed. So I love it, when you're kind of sharing about the program. And the whole program is how long? Explain to me the program. Maybe share that with any of our listeners that might be interested. If you're a new leader and stuff, listen in really quickly, because you had great success with this, Carolene. And I, maybe share that in a framework of how that kind of opens up for people.
Yeah, so, if you are a young leader right now, maybe you're a parent of a young leader, maybe you are the owner of a business that hires young people. All of these kinds of people are definitely people that should check this out. And the curriculum itself can be done in a month, I would say. However, it's unlimited access. If you are still coming back in a year's time, really taking advantage of those coaching calls, I'm all for it, because the way that I kind of frame it is that the program grows as you grow, right? So as you grow, people might come to me and say, if 10 people are struggling with this one thing in terms from a leadership point of view, and it's not in my curriculum, I'm going to add it to their curriculum, right? So kind of the program grows around the leaders that participate in. And I think that's having that very dynamic style makes it really, really valuable. So yeah, from a curriculum point of view, you could do it in a month if you really wanted to put a time frame around it. But the program it's unlimited. I'm not putting a cap on it at all. It's for as long as you want.
Wow, absolutely love it. Thank you for sharing on that. And how would they can you share how would they get involved if somebody is curious? Maybe share us a few different ways that they can go ahead and look for you on your social media or I think your YouTube and all of that, right?
Yeah, so the leadership program is called Better Your Leadership. The website is very easy. It's betteryourleadership.com, very straightforward. And then if you would like to connect with me, it would be my absolute pleasure. My full name, which you can check the spelling on this episode, carolenemeli.com. And that's also my handle on Instagram and on LinkedIn and on YouTube as well. So.
Outstanding. So if you're listening to this and it sounds interesting, if you're still listening to this, you're interested in what we talked about today. So I definitely encourage you to go ahead and reach out to Carolene and just learn a little bit more about what she's doing and the program that she's working with, because it's definitely a healthy foundation. And at Leader Seeds, we're definitely in huge support of anybody that's pouring into the leadership community with healthy foundation and healthy leadership. So thank you for creating that. Thank you for your focus in leadership and how you pour into that continually. I'd also like to kind of ask, I think there's a few things before we kind of, I know we have some good time right now, but the thing that's coming to mind, if anything else, Caroline, is, when you explain this program, I wish there's something, of course, that I had in the early days of leadership,
Yeah.
but maybe explain for people that's listening, if they're not in an early stage of leadership, if they got some experience under them, because we have some listeners what would you say, what would you give one tip or one insight for somebody in that situation today that is experiencing, maybe they look back and it's like, man, I wish I had that before. What would be a great encouragement today?
Yeah, so very practically, I do offer the curriculum in that program separate to the program itself for the exact kind of people. Like if there was someone like me and I wanted to take that curriculum, I offer the curriculum as a separate package just to go through it yourself as if it was like an online course. So if you're interested from that point of view, then that is available. Now, from a kind of tips point of view, what I've learned in this last year, I have learned the most about leadership, honestly, through connecting with people that are not in my field. And I think it's really, really important when you have an expertise that you are actually looking outside that expertise for learning and growth opportunities. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to come on, podcasts like this, and we are now connected, you and I, and we are able to have incredible leadership conversations. And I'm also really looking outside of my own industry in terms of experiences, in terms of the service-based industry, and looking at all sorts of leaders. Actually, my biggest source of leadership inspiration right now is ancient philosophy, looking at Marcus Aurelius, looking at all of those Socrates, all those guys from the past. The wisdom that they have is out of this world and is still incredibly relevant to today's society. And so I think getting creative with the ways that you're actually learning, like, yeah, we can all go and online and do a webinar, or we can all go to like this online event, or we can go through a course, and they're all incredibly valuable. They all have their place in learning and development. But how can you get a little bit creative with your learning? And how can you connect with people that probably you never would have thought to connect with before? Because I think there's so much room for growth when you are speaking with people that have completely different perspectives than you, I think it's
and kind of being open to that, right? Because we can always learn something new with a new perspective, same situation, different perspective, but it'll give us some new eyes in a sense to kind of see new things. And that kind of reminds me of how you said too, it's kind of, as we have new eyes, we're also asking new questions. So what was it? Better questions, better life, quality questions, quality life, right? So, if we keep changing the way we see the same situation, we can still learn from the same experience, but the different perspectives in that experience.
Yeah, there's a really great quote by Epictetus, who's one of the ancient philosophers, and he says, "We are not affected by events, but by the view we take on them." And I think it's a really great way to think about perspective, right? It's not the actual physical thing that we're affected by, but it's the view the meaning that we place on that experience. And when you're able to get a deeper understanding of how other people view that experience, then you're able to actually, I think, become a lot more intelligent, connect a lot deeper, and just from an emotional intelligence level, kind of become on a whole new level. And so I think in leadership, that's incredibly important as well, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Write that down, guys. If she said she dropped another one for you, another bomb, another leadership nugget, write that down, guys. I know you probably already wrote that down. You probably pushed pause to capture it and then played it again to capture to write that down. So thank you for that. The conversation today was definitely it really blessed me, and it was very rich in leadership conversation. And I know there's something I look forward to. So thank you for the time to kind of talk about leadership in so many contexts and also give some real life situations that you went through. I think there's great value in what was shared today for anybody listening in. And I actually even think this conversation might be even catalyst for more conversations, because as you're talking about self-leadership and stuff, my mind is like, oh man, we can talk about that and everything else. So, but thank you for the time that we kind of took today. I got a few fun off the wall questions, if you're cool with it, really quick, just to know Carolene a little bit better. Now, these are not directly associated with leadership, but my goal is to make it fun. So you tell me if it was fun after, and be honest with me. So the first question is your favorite breakfast item. Go.
I'm gonna say coffee because I don't really eat breakfast. I fast until around midday or so. So an incredible espresso coffee.
Okay. So a coffee morning, espresso coffee. That's a great breakfast. That's a great breakfast.
If I was in France, that would be with a freshly baked croissant from the bakery. Yeah.
Wow. I'm a fan of croissants too. Okay, I might just have to take a drive to the bakery after this. Now, the next question is: I think you traveled over to over 41 different countries. Maybe what is the first one that stands out to you, and why? What is the first place that stands out that if you could go back today? I know it's not the best place because it might be hard to choose, but something that's on your mind today that if you could jump on a plane and go to today, where would that be?
I think it's not a place that I've been, but in April 2020, I was supposed to go to Morocco on a 10-day entrepreneur kind of retreat around many different places. And I've wanted to go to Morocco for as long as I can remember. And I'm incredibly fascinated especially by ancient Arabia as it was. And I was so looking forward to that trip. And of course, April 2020 is when everything kind of started. And so I was not able to go on that trip. And so I've been itching to go back there. To go there. So I think Morocco would be the first thing that I would think of.
Awesome. Morocco. Okay. I've never been there too, but maybe, if either of us get there first, we'll share where the spots to go and visit to, right? Next question, favorite dessert.
Okay, this is going to be a little bit strange maybe for some people, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So I'm not so much of a sweet tooth, but especially in the Mediterranean, in a lot of places in Europe and of course all over the world, but there's always a drink that follows the meal. It's the digestive. It's the drink that happens afterwards. And usually it is incredibly strong, 40%, alcohol. It's like really like, but it is a very, very important part of the meal in a lot of cultures. The French culture, it's very much a part. The Greek culture, most of the Mediterranean culture, actually, that is a huge part. But that is actually my favorite part of the meal, is once you finish it, because it works, it's called a digestive, and it does that exact thing.
Wow.
But it is an incredible part of the meal because for the most of every country has their own variety, and usually it's homemade and they use different fruits. But it is there's so much meaning kind of attached to that part of the meal. It's not necessarily about the flavor, it's about what it represents in the meal. So I'll cross off the dessert and I'll add the digestive at the end.
that is answered like a well experienced strategist that you are, because even in your meals, it's a complete experience. And I can relate to that also, because it's a complete experience with the meal, with the dessert, right? It's not an option after, it's the completion of that experience. So very well shared. Thank you so much. And the last question that I have today, thank you for the time. If anything else here, I'm always interested to kind of see what things stood out with our conversation today for you. How was your time spent with us here, and what things kind of stood out? If there's anything you take away from today, from our conversation, what would that be?
Yeah, I'm even now just thinking about that idea of question and answer, right? Like I think about it a lot in general and I talk about it a lot, but I don't know, something sat a little bit differently in our conversation today. And even thinking about, I almost feel like it's my evening right now. And I even think of when I wake up in the morning, like what questions can I ask myself that's going to kind of change a little bit the trajectory of my morning if I'm not feeling like 100%. So I think that's the biggest thing I'll take away from our conversation today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I got to say, in all honesty, seeing that you're an experienced strategist, I was coming in today and I was like, man, I got to make sure that her experience with the Leader Seeds podcast is just 10 and 20. And that's just me because I like to kind of shoot high and kind of do his best, like to challenge myself in a sense. So I took the challenge on, and I hope if anything else that it was right at that point. So thank you for your time today, Carolene.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.